WGSN-DB and Going Solo Network. It's a pleasure to do my first show with you guys, and today's topic is more about the social pressures or the mental pressures that we have individually about social dating to dates. I've only done a little bit of it in the last few years. I've been fortunate to meet partners very quickly through that. And I've experienced it through different means with friends and different communications, obviously talking to people in bars and actually seeing it firsthand to see what people, how they interact on a social date, if you wish, and obviously connecting through an app like Bumble, Tinder, Grindr, not that I've done so, but I've heard many stories of it by talking to different people across the country. But yeah, so basically that's what we're going to start with today. And more perspective of what my friends, more importantly, have told me about it and their reflection on it. And as a whole, what they go through individually through the application, obviously downloading it, creating a profile, the social anxiety about putting themselves on it in a way where they're being, well, we all are pretty much judged on how we are to be perceived as ourselves, what pictures do they put up and what do they put in their bio to be more enticing, I guess, to the ladies or the guys, whoever they're looking for. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first off the bat is talking about some experiences that my friends have had and how they've kind of reached out to their circle of friends like myself and other friends equally. And believe it or not, have just the social anxiety of creating a page where they're being judged by the opposite sex for whom they're trying to judge themselves up against. And there's one in particular, Andy, a very good friend of mine, dear friend, and we were out one night and he was saying, oh yeah, I want to get on date, go back into the realms of dating and seeing what it's like, and pretty much just put himself there on a chopping board for everyone to judge him. And believe it or not, we sat down there for like 20 minutes, half an hour, having a good old chit chat over it all. And his anxiety was, what pictures do I put up that are going to make me in a better, or seem to be in a better light than he perceives himself to be in anyway. And I was just like, put any good photos. He goes, well, I don't really take photos myself. And I was like, because him, myself, pretty much, and other close couple of friends in England aren't really gym goers. We're not really there standing, taking selfies of ourselves or our six packs or us working out in the mirror of the weight section and taking like flexing our biceps to for those Instagram selfies, so to speak. But he's not like that at all. And if anything, he's the complete opposite of that. So it was quite interesting to see that from someone who's really close to me, and to see how nervous and some anxiety came in for him, and that he was doubting himself whether he was actually good enough to be out on the open market to attract himself to other women. So we went through the whole process and had a discussion about it, and all it comes right down to is like from what he sees himself to be, and then what someone else sees him to be somewhere on me 20, 30 miles away in an application. And it got me thinking that maybe we all go through that in some regards, to the levels that we're not entirely confident in our own ability to put ourselves out there and to attract the opposite sex or same sex, whatever, where you're inclined. And we had a good carried on the conversation. So he put out some pictures of himself. So he put himself out there, and then the next stumbling block was the bio. He was like, well, what do I say about myself? And I'm the sort of chap where I would say save that kind of conversation until later on, until you meet him. But as he digressed, and as we were looking through scrolling through his feed one time, it was like they've all got something about them, what they're interested in, and just the dichotomy of the struggles that he was facing internally in processing this, to where he was like, I don't know what to write myself. And I'm like, write what you like, write what you enjoy, write what you're looking for. He goes, that's the thing. He says, been single for, I think at that point it was about 18 months, 2 years. And he didn't know what to write, even about himself, in a glorifying way that others would find attractive. And that's what got me thinking to asking another lad who then later came and joined us for a drink. His name was Paul. Paul came and joined us, and we had exactly the same conversation with him. And Paul was the complete opposite to Andy. Paul had been doing online dating, I think, a good part of 6 months. I hadn't found anyone to obviously settle down with, or so to speak, come off necessarily. And he was saying, from a guy's perspective, or his perspective, and the other guys that he knocks around with in England as well, is that he wasn't too sure that anyone particularly cares about it. And it opened up the conversation more to Andy. It was like he was confident that girls don't really pay that much attention to the finer detail, because he had a little blurb in his bio, and Paul was saying that every girl that he has met or engaged with on the applications that is on Tinder, whether it be Bumble or whatever it was, I think even Plenty of Fish even back in the day, was that some girls didn't even read it, some do, and some will scrutinize it. They will even pay that much attention to his pictures. They'll be asking for the minor details in pictures. Oh, I see you, or I had this landmark in the background. Oh, who are you there? Who are you there with? How long were you there for? When were you there? And so on and so forth. And it opened up, obviously, a bigger conversation, more leading conversation. And what Andy didn't have was that, which I, going back to him, was that I found more interesting, is that he didn't realize he knew that what he knew about himself, he couldn't get that onto writing down into 150 words or 350 characters, and to put that into words. And so we're having a good conversation with the three of us. In the end, we got him there. I think he spaffed off about 20 or 30 words about what he enjoys and what he doesn't enjoy. And it kind of turned out to be a learning curve, because that, on the back of that night, we went out, I think, the following week, we went and played some football back in England, and we went out for drinks afterwards. And a lot of guys don't really take it seriously, and each their own. And he was out, I think we were sitting in the pub waiting for some others to come and join us. And he was just flipping it through as if it was the Yellow Pages. Left, right. It's like looking up for a plumber. And beauty alone was interesting, because he found some girls obviously incredibly attractive, but then on the flip side, by the end of the evening, he was like actually taking more notice of what their bio was saying about them, or what particular interest, to see what he could engage with. And some of the matches that came through were a little bit flippant. There wasn't really that much interaction. Either a girl didn't like a particular girl, for example, didn't like how he replied to her in messages. Maybe that was to do something with slightly intoxicated, or maybe it was just, I think, the level of what girls and guys, obviously we're all to blame for this, is of interest. And what I mean by that is the level of interest of what we have when we're communicating via text message. Because for me personally, and the people close to me like Andy and Paul were saying, and we were communicating, and what came off for the best part of the 3-hour conversation that we had about it all, was that they didn't really understand where the communication gets lost between messages, and the expectation of what is to be perceived already by opening that engagement through text message. So, for example, a girl texts on Bumble, for example, a girl has to text a guy first, first, and it was like, if it was on Tinder and it was the other way around, he'll be saying, like, if an opening question was like hello or how are you, from a guy to a girl, he was like quite surprised by saying how boring that would be. Like, the girl will perceive him to be boring. He has got no opening agenda to have that conversation with him, or they're not particularly showing interest in all the efforts that have been taken to date. to include information on his bio page or to show interest of what he does in life, and by detailing that on his profile. But yet, on the opposite hand, the girls were doing exactly the same by the weekend introductions. Well, we felt they were weak instructions. He was saying, like, they're just boring. Like, someone would text message hello, or how are you? How was your evening? What are you up to? Still didn't engage. He'll follow up then by saying, I'm just out with some friends having some drinks. Oh, I won't bother messaging you then. And he goes, oh, no, it's fine. You can message you, so on and so forth. Because at this point, later in the evening, there's about 10 of us out. So the engagement levels were dropping off some. So he'd carry on having a conversation with them. But in the meantime of that, and what we found out the following day on the Sunday was that the girls just there was that fine line. It seemed there was a fine line between the level of engagement someone was willing to go through and what the willingness of the text message would suggest. So, for example, she would say, oh, I'll leave you be, you're out with your friends and so forth, and Andy will reply back, oh, no. Well, he did reply back with, oh, no, it's fine. They're talking amongst themselves. I'm good for 5-10 minutes. And she would go, that's fine. I'll carry on tomorrow. We can carry on this conversation tomorrow. And that struck me to a chord to the point where, well, he's opening a channel. He's opening lines of communication with you. So why don't you engage in it? And then all the other aspects of it is like, that's fine. I'll leave it till tomorrow. So what we're finding is there's no really level playing field of expectations, because some might be sky high, and then some expectations are incredibly low to the point where it's boring. Hello, how are you? All the generic introductions and the conversations that were leading to be quite boring conversations and openers, to the point where Anna was like, he had 3 days on it. He was like, I'm done with this. He said, do not need this in my life, and it's just too draining, and it's too pretty much, it's a waste of time for him. So he then went on and started talking to girls in the pubs recently. And obviously because of COVID, everything's been shut. So even obviously the heightened pressures equally of online dating and having those communication skills have been stretched to a degree because of COVID and the pressures that's put on for the last 12 months. He's found that even more people are more reserved behind the screen of a mobile phone to actually then, rather than actually talking in person. So I said, then we flipped on its head. I was like, why bother with the communication necessarily? Obviously, they're strung out conversations on messaging back and forth. I said, why don't you just meet the girl? Ask them for a date and see if they're willing to go for a drink or go for something to eat, go for coffee, whatever it may be at the time of day. And he was taken back by the fact that the girls were even more shy than what he started when he initially started dating pre-COVID. He was saying that the girls pretty much want to have a drawn out length of time with the communication on text messaging back and forth on the app. Then they would be happy to have the meet of a lunch date or whatever it was. And he couldn't get his understanding of it, because that's the whole purpose of being on a social dating platform. The idea is to actually meet finally, intentionally, is to meet and then see where it goes, not to have this drawn out process of talking about mundane lifeness, so to speak, 9 to 5 of life or thereafter in the evening. He's like, I want to meet these girls. I want to meet someone. Let's go for it. Let's open this up. Let's go for dinner, whatever it may have been. And he was finding that the girls are very much more withdrawn from doing that. And it tickled me, because even more profoundly now, because this has been going on for a good couple of months in England. Yeah, since I opened at the beginning of June, it's been going on for some time. And nothing's really changed. You'll meet some girls who are completely open and in the conversation, willing to text. The engagement is good, the conversation is good, and it's flowing. They talk on the phone, but they can't really, within their Monday to Sunday week, they can't really find a time to suit that meets up or meet up, sorry, with each other. And what they're really he's really struggling with, Andy in particular, is that level of commitment of going the extra 10 yards or that necessary 10 yards to have that. And he's now got to the point where he's taking himself back off it. And the contrast to that is he is willing to find some find someone, sorry, to open those conversations, have those deep, meaningful conversations in person, and hopefully grow within a relationship. And back on that is that Paul was having the polar opposite experience. He's, like I said, he's well groomed and he takes care of himself. He goes to the gym a hell of a lot, and he doesn't mind showing off his body in some of these photos. And he gets more and more as the more platform he goes on, the more he shows. And he sees that some of the girls show more engagement, willing to show, shall we say, a lot more openness and willingness to meet on a particular evening or lunch date, whatever it may be. And that, whereas Andy now, as a result, between the two of them and the conversations that digress thereafter, is that Andy is now more conscious of himself and probably to a certain degree a little bit more insecure because he sees the success Paul's having, and they're very similar attributes apart from body form. They're very much outgoing, love to go out and have a great time, love to drink. Socially, they're incredible to be around. But the one thing I see that is completely different between them is their physical shape, i.e. one has more muscles than the other. And I'm not to say that all girls have a generic way of seeing what they like. Yes, it's attractive, but beyond the muscles and beyond obviously the image that is portrayed online, there is something else on a deeper, more profound level. And what happens for Paul, bless him, is he's able to engage and go out on these dates and to hold these conversations, but then obviously the girls are more willing to have obviously go the extra to a third base, if you wish, to keep it clean. Whereas Andy is a lot more reserved because he doesn't have that attribute about him. He doesn't have the big muscles, and therefore he's a little bit more reserved online to showing off himself, typically. And then as we've gone on, as the months have gone on now, best part of 3 months, a couple of other guys that I know very well are doing online dating too, because obviously England's reopened from COVID. And what they're finding is, the girls are the girls are a lot more judgmental than they were from what they could remember. So I guess pre-March 2020, sorry. So there is something that's shifted in these COVID months over the last 18 of them. That's for my friends, and maybe I'm just too close to them to see something different. But what I do see is that social pressures of what a guy is to look like, especially with the people, with all of us being locked down, is that something's changed, and something's changed in a way where I think the guys are a little bit more, my friends particularly, have become a little bit more insecure about themselves, and they are showing that on a representative level on their social platforms for Tinder, Bumble, so on and so forth. So that said, it gave me pause for thought of just as to what is the biggest attribute towards that. Is it their self-confidence in themselves and obviously the lockdown, or is it more in the fact that they don't see themselves as something more than what it should be? And that's got me to thinking, well, we're going to come back after the short break to where we can engage a little bit more further and take this to another level and just open it up about what I see closely to me, and so obviously to see what we potentially may be missing on a social level. So that said, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back shortly to open this conversation up even further. So please stay tuned and I look forward to returning shortly. Hi guys, welcome back. WGSN. This is Neil, and today we're discussing the effects of what it's like for internet singles dating, and more particularly, obviously, something close to me for my friends, and just relaying these stories and to see what the effect that you guys may be experiencing, and whether this touches something close to home for you too, or maybe something I can learn more from too as we go through this conversation. But I just, prior to the advert, I was just talking about some good friends of mine back in England and some of the social pressures they're now finding with things opening back up in England, especially after the 18 months of COVID back there, and what they're now experiencing, and also what's to come. I think for them mentally and obviously physically, and maybe some new horizons for them with some obviously some new future partners. But there's another story I'm going to tell, and which will shine more light on this experience as an outsider, because I've got a girlfriend now, but as a good friend to these friends back in England. There's another guy called Ben, and he recently just came out of a long-term marriage. I think he was best part of 12 years, I think it was. And what Ben described, obviously going through the marriage and the breakup, was that he was just ready to have some free time and to enjoy, I suppose, the benefit of what we all have now to meeting someone, obviously, because it's so easy just to, like I say, just to jump on these social platforms and engage in something that whatever works for both people who are obviously willing to open to that. But for him personally, he came out of marriage, as I say, and then he went on a venture just to let off some steam. He had some good, I think the best part, 6 months on his own, recalibrated life for him personally and adjusted accordingly. And he's got 3 kids with his ex-wife now, who they still get on amicably well, and they have a brilliant relationship. And what he's finding going on this social path, shall we say, is that he can't keep up with the conversations. It's from one extreme to the other. You got Andy, bless him, who doesn't necessarily have the confidence himself to put himself on the center stage to be swiped right on, I guess, for the best part. And then you got obviously Paul, who has a lot of success purely from these attributes of working out pretty much twice a day And then you've got obviously Ben coming onto it now, where he's come off the back of a long marriage. He's got 3 children. They're pretty much grown up now to a stage where they don't really need a lot of looking after. He picks up from school, and he shares custody or access with his ex-wife, and they share that pretty well. So from Ben's experience going forward for the last, I'd say he joined online from about May, and his experience has been completely different to what he was expecting. He had the anticipation that he would go on, meet some girls who would be open-minded to having open relationships, or willing to just see what happens and where it goes. But what he's now finding is that he went on, met a girl, they went out, had a drinks. I think they went to Manchester out. Yeah, the first date was in central Manchester. They went out, had a fantastic time. And then he got a reply the following morning and said, I'm just not into it. They didn't go home with each other. They literally just had a week's conversation. I think he said they met on a Monday, met online, that is, not actually in person. And then they went out for dinner and drinks on Saturday. Communication, they spoke, I think, twice. I think he said they spoke on the Wednesday and the Friday, just initially for the Wednesday to engage with each other. Friday, just to relay the plans for Saturday. They went into Manchester in the afternoon, went for some afternoon drinks and some dinner, and then they stayed out in Manchester till late evening. They went home separately. He thought it was a great success. They shared a kiss. They shared a great time, more importantly. And then he gets a message in the morning, thank you for a great time, Ben, but I'm just not into you. And he asked for some feedback, which I was quite surprised by. And she goes, I just didn't feel the connection. And he replied back, well, we spent the best part of 7 hours together, so what was missing from that? And then she just blocked him completely. And he was like, oh, well, just go back to the drawing board. So he then started putting himself back on the chopping block, if you wish, for the social media, on the social dating scale. And then what he was then finding is that there are a lot of girls are dressed up and showing themselves in a particular light, especially up in Northern England. I'm not saying anywhere else is completely different. I suspect it maybe is, but this is the stories I'm telling secondhand. But what he was saying is that these girls are putting themselves in the light where they're dressed up, incredibly beautiful women apparently, or they're in completely skimpy clothes, bikinis or underwear, and that's a lot of them now are just going on the OnlyFans hunt as well. So what they're doing is using the dating profiles and platforms to advertise their part-time jobs, or some full-times maybe, but as on OnlyFans. And what you're seeing is the level of conversation between the two going back and forth, particularly in some of the girls. He said there's probably 5 or 6 from memory were literally just interested in generating more custom to their OnlyFans page. So anything that he saw on OnlyFans, anything that he saw on their profiles that consisted of OnlyFans, he completely swiped left. Bye-bye. He was not interested in the slightest. So he then recalibrated himself to what he was specifically looking for. And he put that specifically on his page. This is what I'm looking for. This is who I am as a person. And hopefully he was looking to engage in that and meet someone on a similar wavelength. And to some surprise success, it's come well. He's dated 3 girls, not at the same time. That'd be completely wrong. He's dated 3 girls, and he was quite surprised about the openness to what he was looking for in himself, i.e., this is the sort of girl I'm looking for. This is what I'm interested in. It'd be great to meet someone with similar interests. It would also be great if you shared my same feelings or ethics on life, and so on and so forth. He got more, I wouldn't say necessarily more swipes or more people interested in, because on some of them in the top right-hand corner, you get obviously a queue of how many people find you attractive. But what he was finding, his engagement levels were more profound once he opened himself up and showing what he's actually interested in, whatever that may be. Whether I don't think he's that particularly politically engaged, but if he was a vegan, for example, this is why I'm a vegan, or this is my ethics on life, or this is what I'm looking for from a person, so on and so forth. He got more compounded interest from the opposite sex than he was anticipating, to be fair, because he is a handsome chap. So to look at him, you think he is attractive. So he done quite well from that. But he's like I said, he had 3 successful dates terms for a couple of months each. I think he said, 6 weeks each. Big pardon, 6 weeks each, give or take. And now he's dating a new girl, purely from the aspect of the other two. One, her job took her away. The other one found that she wasn't ready to commit to a relationship. And now this third girl who he's dating is, from what he speaks, is a lovely girl. And on the back, coming on the back of that, he found that obviously opening up to these girls, opening up himself more importantly, and kind of ignoring the social pressures of what's perceived. You know, obviously you see it in clothes adverts, you see it in any form of adverts, and sadly, sex sells pretty much everything. And there's an attribution for a guy, I believe, and certainly one of my closest friends, that we are to look a certain way. There's a certain image, and I feel for the obviously girls, because they've had these opinions or these thoughts of what they should look like for centuries, and it's completely disgusting to some degree. I can imagine it's not to get too political, but it's predominantly controlled by obviously the white man, obviously owning the companies to some degree. I might be completely wrong on that, as might be my perspective, but from what I see, the women obviously have been, you know, supermodels, or to wear bikinis, or underwear, obviously adverts, or you are to look a certain way. And I see that now coming into the guys' spectrum of tattoos, go to the gym, because there's certain, I'm in late 30s, and from my 18-year experience, experience of the last 18 years, beg pardon, I see a lot more gyms. There are so many more gyms open up, even here in Las Vegas, or wherever it be back in England. And as a result, I do believe there is an expectation on guys to look a certain way, particularly when they're putting themselves in a market of, not necessarily to attract women, but obviously that's the end goal, to feel attractive. But if for those who don't, I think it's more compounded that they see themselves as something less. And now with the art form of tattoos, not that I have anything against tattoos, I don't have any personally, some are absolutely amazing. I do feel as if it's maybe the tides have changed before that. You know, guys look incredibly great with their shirts off, their 6-packs, their huge pecs, their huge arms, and obviously tattoos to some degree right now are glorifying that. And there is a for in England anyway, from my closest experience or experiences in England, there are so many guys, so many friends of mine too, that have tattoos. You've got the sleeves, they're working out a lot more, they're opening their shirts up a lot more because of it too. And I think that's just maybe whether it's a change in the tide of taste and what we like, or what's becoming attractive because of the shift in normality, I'm not too sure. But my opinions are, from obviously looking and observing my friends in action with all this, is that a couple of them have gone that way, but all got, well, the 3 in question have got sleeves, they've got tattoos all over the torso and chest, whereas the opposite friends who have 0 tattoos slightly feel inadequate. I think is a strong word, but I certainly feel as if then, because they don't have it, they feel a little bit more insecure about themselves. And that quite surprised me, because the same people pretty much, obviously they've got different attributes, don't get me wrong, but they're very good friends of mine, and they all share incredibly fondness and kindness and so on and so forth. But I didn't really think I didn't think they would be that affected because they don't choose to have tattoos and because they don't choose to go to the gym once or twice a day, 7 days a week. And that was taking me back by surprise. And I think I can see that more so. For example, the other aspect of it is when I go online shopping because of COVID, and obviously it's a lot easier to shop online, you see a lot more tattoos in the mainstream modeling. And for example, I was looking on, I'm going away with some friends to Ireland shortly in a couple of weeks. And I was looking for some funky shirts because we've got a day where we're dressing the most disgusting clothes going. So I went on for a company called Boohoo, and there was guys, obviously attractive guys because they're models, but the three guys that I saw, particularly predominantly in these obviously modeling clothes, all tattooed up pretty much obviously from the waist all the way up to the neckline, even literally goes all the way around and up behind their head, and a big part behind their ear and close up to behind their skull. So I was quite taken back just how much of a switch that has taken, and how much of I can see that reflected in some of my friends' personal circumstances too, to the point where obviously it makes them feel somewhat inadequate to some of the girls that they're attracted to. And maybe the girls are just equally unattracted to my friends, which is okay. But I was kind of taken back by it. So I think going forward, and the conversation that I'm going to have with my friends is like, I think is to the point where I'm going to ask you, like, why does this affect you so much? In the sense where, why would one's opinion alter our own opinion of ourselves to the point where it's detrimental to us to some degree? It's obviously affecting our self-confidence. And I didn't realize just how close sometimes that can be. You know, maybe sometimes you're too close to up against the mirror to see the entirety of the mirror, if I wish for an analogy. But these friends have, like I said, they've all got different circumstances and they've all got different experiences. But on the mainstream of probably about 20 friends of mine back in England, and we're all on these different chats on WhatsApp and obviously sharing stories and sharing experiences. And then when I open up, when we have the engagement personally about something or nothing, or just checking in to see how we are, being I'm over here and obviously back in England, is that some of them just have got to a point now where they just can't be bothered. They'd just rather go into a bar and just open up a conversation, because what Bumble and Tinder, probably Bumble, has brought to the mainstream is the easiness to hook up and find something that we're looking for. And obviously that works for many different people. There's no right or wrong with that. But also secondly, I do think what more, and maybe more profoundly, what it has allowed is the ease of non-commitment. So if we want just to go look for one thing, we can find that with ease. And I think that also for those who are looking for a committed relationship and to settle down, that has also brought in some hesitation to whether all going these extra yards, obviously the communication, to pursuing a conversation with someone that you don't know only through text message until you both can obviously align to have a date, is worth it. You know, a lot of the conversations that we have had over the, like I said, the last 6 months, I'd say, has been that they'd rather just go to a bar and talk to a person, because the conversation that you can have within 10 or 20, 30 minutes, however it may last for, is 2 or 3 or 4 weeks conversation on text message with a Bumble date, for example, or a Tinder date. A lot of these conversations can be that expedited in person and so much more profoundly effective than it is online. And my friends, obviously I'm referring to them in person because I'm taken back just how obviously it's affects them to some degree. And it's taken me by surprise just how quickly the shift has changed in the last 18 months. Because prior to COVID, obviously, the latter end of 2019, for example, Christmas comes to mind when I was in England and we were out, and there was, yes, obviously there was the forefront obviously you can go meet someone online. That's neither here or there. But being around people at Christmas, or leading up to Christmas, sorry, I was back in England for my birthday in 2019, it was in November, and we're out for drinks. And the communication between people was free. It wasn't as going to sound really old here, but it wasn't as effective as what I recall growing up in my 20s, when we actually could go to a bar and talk to people without any agenda. Today, certainly some friends that say, like, girls, pretty much the girls in experience say that they feel as if the girls just think my friends just want one thing. Whether they do or whether they don't, it's down to them too, or the engagement they're having. But there is this persona that seems to be from the feedback from it all, is that girls just are a little bit more cautious now, and a little bit more hesitant to engaging in that level. And there's almost that hesitation now. And as a result of that hesitation, or that lack of commitment from them, is that my friends are almost going back internally to think, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Because I also think, because of the ease of online dating, is that the openness to the conversations at times isn't there either. So rather than saying at the end of the night, you know what, I've had a fantastic time, but I just don't think we're compatible, or I want to see you again. The guys, the 5 guys that I've mentioned this evening, have not had that. They have never had the girl say, I'd like to see you again tonight or tomorrow, or let's go do lunch the following day, whatever it may be. They haven't got that. So I'm not too sure which way it's going to go, to be fair, but I think going forward, my friends, Andy, bless him, obviously Ben, up in Northern England in Manchester, has had a fantastic success, because obviously he's now dating a new girl, so yes, I guess it is fantastic success. But Andy, there's Paul, there's plenty, there's Sam from football, a load of guys predominantly from football. What they're finding is that the more reserved they come, and maybe it's some endorphins that were given off, or whatever it may else be, but they're finding out, I know this because I asked them last week, is that, do you think because you're being more reserved, that as a result they're feeling that necessarily, that not necessarily tension is the right word, but they're feeling that pullback from yourselves, to the point where they're thinking, well, okay, is he in this, or is he just looking for a quick thing, or is it a case of, I need to be doing something else? And there's all these unanswered factors or questions that I think they're going through, to the point where it's playing on our mind too much, to the point where they can't just be themselves, because, okay, for example, for easy examples would be, I don't have tattoos, I'm not ripped in the gym, from the gym, I don't take selfies. There's this stigma about what my friends, and I guess part of me to some degree, is that what we're to look like, because what we see from advertisements, what we see from clothes models, or models in general, is a certain type of body or image that we should be portraying. And I think that is having the ripple effect coming down, and maybe it's creating an even playing field, because obviously for what women have been put through for years, which is royally unfair, to the point now where I think some friends, obviously those closest to me, are taking note and certainly feeling those ripples coming through. And I'm not too sure what they're going to do about it, because do we need the opposite sex or the same sex relationship to make us feel good? By rights, no, we shouldn't need that. We should have the confidence in ourselves to look inwardly, and to see that we can be confident, and we can have the attributes that someone's going to find attractive, and what you will find attractive equally. So I think it's going to take some time to play out, to the point where they're going to find their feet with it. They're going to find some stumbling blocks along the way, to what they find. Maybe their taste is going to change in themselves, because how do we start growing confidence in ourselves? What is it that's going to, that mechanism inside us? Is it a thought process? Is it a changing our habits to perceiving ourselves as different? Do we need to be questioning ourselves more? Do we need to be listening to our fears more? Not necessarily ignoring them, and well, certainly not ignoring them, but I don't think we should ever ignore our fears, because I think we should face them. I think we should face our fears, because that's on the other side of the fear. It can be greatness. It can be a fulfilling time. It can be a magical time, to the point where if we face our biggest questions about ourselves, that's where we're going to find our strengths, and our weaknesses can turn into our strength to show us the way of what we don't want to be, how we can become a better and a bigger person to push through these times. And I think speaking to Andy yesterday about this, he had a phone date on Monday evening in England, and he said there was a lot of awkward pauses in the conversation. I'm like, you don't even know each other, so you got all your life to tell. Like, like you got the best part of 30 years to tell a stranger what you're like and what you don't like. And that tickled me, because he goes, oh yeah, I never really gave that much thought. So just, sorry, I'm just tracking back over the conversation in my head slightly, but he took away from that. He was like, I never really saw it like that. He says, because the awkward moments were once the mundaneness of 9 to 5 stopped, and talking about what you do for weekends, what do you enjoy, what's your social friend circle like, or what do you enjoy going on holiday, or have you got anything planned, obviously coming back off the COVID, or what was COVID like for experience for you, so on and so forth. Then he found that the pauses would come in and they'll hold, and then they'll kick up again, and they'll find something to go on. So he said, he to be fair to Andy, he is a great communicator in regards of how he feels. He says to the girl, I can't remember her name, sorry, but he says at the end of the time, he said, look, it's been nice talking to you, but he said, I'm not feeling it. And he couldn't understand why. And I think it was the conversation and back that we had once I spoke to him about it. And he says, I just wasn't me. Like, when you speak to some people, they just even listen to you, and they're that attentive and that intuitive to what you're saying, to the point where the conversation just flows. A 20-minute conversation lasting 2 hours, for example, and he wasn't getting that with that. And so he's taken a pause from online dating now, whereas my other friends up in Manchester, for example, old Ben, he's full steam ahead, obviously, with his new date, and obviously Paul is just carrying on the way he is. He's meeting girls. I'd say he's probably meets about 2 or 3 a month, but he's enjoying it. Oh, and the people that he meets are open to the conversation too. So, and his engagement with them. And I'm not too sure what he's looking for, and I'm not too sure if he understands what that means just yet. But like I said, we've all got time, and we've all got the reflection to take and to pause and just ask ourselves what pressures we're facing, and what we really want from this experience. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from it. I'm going back, like I say, in a couple of weeks for a good friend's birthday, so I'm looking forward to that. And shall stay tuned for more. But I'm sure there's some fascinating stories that are going to come from the back end of it all. But in the true aspect of it all, I only wish they find happiness, and they can get something from it all, because that's what we're all on there for. When we do put ourselves on the chopping board, for all of us to put ourselves in the limelight, to be seen, we all work for great things. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And this is WGSN, and stay tuned for more, because there's great things coming from this station. So thank you ever so much for listening, and staying tuned. Men's issues, topics, concerns, going solo every Wednesdays. So make sure you stay tuned, and thanks again.